Hello. Just gonna wait for a second, as I usually do, until people join me. Hope everyone's having an okay week. I'm having an okay week, I think, because it's Monday, so I haven't really got much to compare it to so far. I'm filming a new series of Judge Rinda's crime stories tomorrow. Anybody wants to know? And I think it's series 7, actually, this. We've been doing a lot of them. So I've got a lot to cover today, and before I start, as ever, trigger warnings. We are going to be covering sexual abuse, we are going to be covering suicide, we are going to be covering certain mental health disorders as well. So, hoping that everyone's ready for the ride. I'm testing this on YouTube today as well. I've no idea whether it will work, and when I say I'm testing it, clearly I don't mean that I'm testing it. I mean my husband's testing it, because he's the man with the know-how. If it were up to me, it'd just be me and my mobile phone. But nonetheless, that doesn't matter. So I'm going to get started in a second, and as I've said, if there are any triggers coming up for people, please let me know. At the moment, if people are joining, I can't see anybody at the moment, so I can't say hello to you, apologies, but I will try to get that done in a few minutes. And oh, hello Darren, how you doing? Hi Adele. Oh, let me just see people coming up. Hiya Joanne, hiya Francesca, hiya Nicola, hiya Pauline, hiya Julia, I should say. Hiya Hannah, and I will get around to saying hello to people as well. Hiya Ron, how's it going? So first question we'll talk about is suicide. Like I said, trigger warning for everybody, and it's anonymous. Hi Emma, my friend killed himself. No one suspected a thing. We didn't expect anything like this to happen. Since then I felt so sad, so worthless, and it's like that 24/7. I self-harm and I feel like the world would be a better place without me. I also use alcohol to block and numb the pain. As well, I've started smoking. I just don't see any hope. I was referred to CAMHS and was diagnosed with clinical depression. Unfortunately, the counselling with CAMHS all ended after my first appointment, and I've now been discharged. I'm currently in year 13 at sixth form, and a lot of people in my year who are close to this particular individual are struggling, and one of my other friends has tried to kill himself over this summer. The teachers at sixth form don't really understand and are expecting everything to be normal. It's far from what it used to be, and I don't know if it will ever go back to normal. I've had enough of feeling so low, I don't know what to do, and I have constant suicidal thoughts that are becoming hard to manage. First of all, I'm really glad that you've got in touch, and I think that if you're listening, there'll probably be some comments that are coming up about people wanting you to know how important you are, and also completely empathising with how shit it can feel sometimes, particularly when we're in these situations. Disclaimer, as you know, my father's recently killed himself, so I'm in the scenario where I'm what I consider a victim stroke survivor of suicide, and I understand that the way that you feel at the moment is really, really complex, because when you lose somebody to suicide, there are a few things that shift. So first of all, the boundary's gone. You know, we don't really think about killing ourselves. We might have bad times and things might go wrong, but we don't necessarily really think about that. You might have a fleeting thought saying, oh, it'd be better if I didn't wake up tomorrow. But then all of a sudden, somebody in our frame of reference, somebody that we know, somebody that we love, takes their own life. And suddenly, those boundaries that once seemed so firm, this idea that we'd never do anything to harm ourselves, gets blurred and becomes flexible. And what you're experiencing now is an understanding that you can make those choices. And even though part of your brain's saying, well, this would be awful, to take that would be really awful because it would hurt lots of people, because you're feeling this sense of loss and hopelessness and helplessness, and also this feeling of futility, what's it all about, completely normal feelings that you're going through whilst dealing with the loss of a really good friend and the suicidal opportunities that somebody's taking at the moment with their own lives, even though they've failed. This is making you really concentrate and contemplate around what the point of life is. And it's completely normal because you're going through a big grief process. And as I said, somebody's shifted your boundaries. First of all, you're suffering from suicidal ideation. And that's really important to note, because whilst you might be clinically depressed, one of the things that you're experiencing is a high level of thinking constantly about suicide. Now, what's really important here is that you absolutely go and talk to somebody about that. And I know that college might not be the place, because if your tutors are all imagining that life should just go back to normal, well, that's delusional and it's also unhelpful. but you do need to tell somebody that you're feeling this way. And that's not because they're going to rip you away and place you anywhere else. It's because suicidal ideation is powerful, it's debilitating, it's distressing, and also it means that you're constantly thinking of things that make you feel further depressed. And it also means that you're pushing those boundaries just a little bit. You know, you're thinking a little bit more about suicide than you really should. Because what we want for you is to be happy and healthy and to feel like life's worth living. So I know that self-harm is a coping strategy, but I also know that self-harm puts you at a higher risk of suicide. So if I were to talk about it in statistical terms, people who self-harm have a 20% higher risk of harming themselves as in suicide within 5 years. So we need to bring you back from that situation. And it can be really confusing because you'll go online and you'll hear people talk about self-harm, and it will be in this suggestion that it's a coping strategy. So you might think to yourself, well, actually it's self-soothing, it works for me. But actually this is a precursor to something really destructive. So we don't just want you to be able to feel okay about the self-harm. We want you to realise that that's something you deserve and support and help and guidance over. And I'm really unhappy that you've had a CAMHS appointment that ended without you getting any further counselling. My lovely, you need it. You absolutely need it. It is awful losing somebody to suicide. I know. I am living it right now. I am absolutely living it every single day. So I completely understand where you are. But I also know that the way that you approach every single day is how you make a choice about whether that's going to be something that can be constructive and to some degree positive, not in the early days, but at least working towards it, or that it can really drown you. Because that's what suicide does. It becomes this vacuum of grief that feels unmanageable and hopeless because you've no positive end to it. But it's all about realising that you're still here. You have this opportunity to live your life and to do all the things that your friends sadly won't get the chance to do. And that's still within your reach. It's within your capabilities. It's something that's there still for you. And that's powerful. But you have to start thinking about, well, how do I manage my mental health to get through this? First of all, after this, I'll get a link put on there. I want you to go on Kooth.com. I want you to look at it. It's specifically for 13 to 25-year-olds. They completely get individuals who are struggling like this. I want you to go on, I want you to register, I want you to talk about things on the forum, and ideally ask them for some support because they do counselling online as well. And counselling online has proven to be as effective as face-to-face, so it's something that's very worth trying. I want you to be completely aware that one of the things that you need to start doing is creating some strategies day to day. Now, that might be getting up in the morning 10 minutes earlier and going and sitting down and practicing some real meditation. 10-15 minutes in the morning, get it from YouTube, go on my site, look at the things on YouTube that you can get for free. That's the brilliant thing, you don't have to pay a penny for it. Secondly, I want you to think about how you're organising your day to make sure that you're giving yourself and your mental health the best chance possible. That means I want you to think about what you're eating. I want you to think about what you're drinking. One of the things that I did when Dad killed himself, I gave up alcohol. Literally, I gave it up. And I gave it up for one reason. I don't need to self-medicate my pain. In fact, my sweetheart, if you are drinking, you are trying to take yourself away from the pain. And I understand. It's horrible feeling grief. It's horrible being depressed. But alcohol, all that's going to do is going to lengthen the time period of healing. You understand? It's going to take longer for you to heal. But when you stop thinking in that way, when you say to yourself, you know what? It's really shitty that my friend killed themselves. It's really awful that my other friend has felt so sad that they've thought of taking their own life and tried. It's really awful that I'm self-harming. But what I know is these strategies ain't working for me. They're really not working for me. You know, because life at this age is about living. It's about hope and future. It's about opportunities that you are going to have oodles of. But if you drink, if you smoke, if you play into that darkness that just wants to swallow you, then all you're doing is playing into the position of negative mental health. That's not a blame statement, by the way. That's just me offering you the clear advice that you need to hear right now. Now, positive mental health, it takes more work. I genuinely mean that. I'm the first person to say that right now, when I wake up in the morning, I have this feeling, and this feeling is like, I don't want to get up. But then at the same time, the feeling has this underlying fear of like complete anxiety. So like, I don't want to get up, but I'm in complete anxiety. I don't want to get up, but I'm in complete anxiety. So I don't want to stay in bed because I'm anxious, but I want to stay in bed because I don't want to face the day, right? So I have to work through that. And you have to be hard line with yourself, because there is so much around you to live for. Your life has not even begun yet. But the fact that you're articulating your feelings, the fact that you're expressing your empathy, the fact that you have deep love for people, albeit that have taken their life, shows what a sensitive, incredibly bright human being you are. And the gifts that you can give to this world are far-reaching. And you have to hear that, because when we're in that darkness, we just don't see the light. So you have to listen to my words tonight, and it has to spark just a tiny little fraction of light in the corner of whatever blackness there is, and that is enough to start cracking through. And in the end, we can light it up so brightly. You need to start thinking about reducing your alcohol. I'd get rid of it. I'd be really clear about it. Just kick it to the curb. Doesn't matter that you're young. Do it differently. Be different. Be better, because you can be and you deserve it. Secondly, make sure you're eating a healthy diet. Everyone tells you to do it. Nobody ever gets around to doing it. The people who do thrive. 3, go online. I want you to find as many inspirational people online that you can follow. I want you to literally surround yourself, whether it's women completely covered in tattoos because they're doing their inspiration differently, whether it's people who laugh at things that go wrong in their life instead of the beautiful people who just look like they live on a piece of lettuce and have completely bronzed their body with some kind of gravy powder. It doesn't matter. Find people that make you feel good, because when you spend time online, you need to spend your time really, really connected to things that make you feel better. 3, I want you to sign up for Couth.com. I want you to go on. I want you to connect. I want you to talk. I want you to reach out. 4, I want you to speak to adults in your life that you might have who you can confide in. It might be a healthcare professional, parent, it might be an adult friend, somebody who can hear you, takes you seriously, and acknowledges your pain. I want you to know consistently that when you work at mental health, you get the result. I want you to go to bed every night, and beforehand, I want you to write 3 things that you're really, really grateful for. And I want you to write 1 thing that really, really made you struggle, but that you learned from. I want you to start practicing positive mind setting, because you are changing the neural pathways in your brain. And most of all, my love, if you feel like you are going to take your life, I want you to get on the phone and call an ambulance. I want you to demand that you get help, because what I can tell you now is, just as you are feeling the devastation from your friend, imagine the people who love you. When somebody takes their own life, albeit that they felt desperate, they take a bit of everybody else's too. And it's clear that you are somebody who doesn't like this pain that you're being left with. Don't do that to the people around you by misguiding yourself into believing that you don't have value, because you are priceless beyond measure. Everything about you has got some perfect synergy in this world, and you're meant to be here, and you have a purpose. You just don't know it yet. I say to everybody, when I'm having like a really, really bad day, and I am bad at most things. You know, me and my husband laugh about this all the time, because people will tell me that I'm really great at stuff because, you know, I do this communication and I do listening and I do problem solving. But pretty much past that, I don't really do anything that well. And I'm cool with it. I'm like totally cool with it, because I found my thing. I found my thing. And I've just concentrated all my efforts on my thing. I love human beings. I love people in pain, because I know that we can get somewhere hopeful. And I know that I'm good with communication. I've just concentrated my efforts on that. Okay, I do make a mean lemon drizzle cake, but nonetheless, the rest of it is just based around communication. When I was a kid, I just remember thinking to myself, when I heard this bit of information, and it transformed my whole belief system about humanity. It was less people then. But if I take the example now, there are 7 billion people in this world. 7 billion people. Mother Nature still, in spite of all of those vast numbers, she marked you with your fingerprint. You. Out of all the 7 billion people in this world, you got your fingerprint. Now, Mother Nature might screw up in certain ways, but let me tell you, she marks each and every one of us with that fingerprint, because she identifies us as a masterpiece. She identifies us as something that can be amazing to this world, and she marks you so that you know you're unique. And we do a lot in this world to make people feel average. You know, we send them through a school system that bores them and doesn't really inspire them, and we teach them that they're average because they're not good at maths or English. You know, we teach you this, but Mother Nature never wanted you to believe that. She gives you something that's really clear. And every single human being in this planet, if you turn your understanding to what you feel passionately about, what you want in your world, and you don't follow any path that somebody gives you, you just follow the path you want, life gets easier. And I really mean that, and I want to get that across to you. And I'm sure you've got a lot of love on the side here. I'm sure that people are telling you that you're important, but reach out. Because like I said, I am in the same space as you, but what I'm learning is that you can do something with grief. You can make grief good. You really can make grief good. It can have meaning. It can have purpose. It can have healing, okay? That's what I want you to do. It's a lot to take in, but for now, Kooth.com. Hi, I'm not sure how to care about myself. I try going out all the time. I do loads and I love others and my family, but I honestly despise myself. Right, so number one, if you are sitting there now saying, I despise myself, you are creating a neural pathway which is negative, it's powerful, it's reinforcing. You say it enough time, it goes from conscious conditioning and understanding to unconscious process and action. It means that you go from thinking it to becoming it. We need to shift that. So how do you do that? Number one, the most obvious way is to shift your mental language. It's hard. You get into habits, you call yourself names, you tell yourself a lot of negatives about yourself, and actually it feels really foreign to say, I'm a really good guy, I'm a really decent human being, I'm fantastic at art or cooking or geography or whatever it is, I'm a brilliant partner. That's hard because you've got yourself into a negative habit system. But just like smoking, you can give it up, you can make a choice. And what you're going to do tonight is you're going to make that choice. After this, I want you to sit down and I want you to write down 15 statements about you. I don't want any of them negative. I want every single one of them positive. If there is something that you're struggling with, ask somebody who loves you. You say that you're loved by your friends. You say that you're a nice person. You say that you care about people. There are going to be people battering down your doors saying what a great human being you are. If you need them to give you those notes, ask them to. And then I want you to say them again and again and again. I want you to say them 10, 15 times a day, because what we're going to do is we're going to shift all of that negative thought processes and feelings into positive to constructive unconscious action, because that's what happens. That's what occurs. And whilst that might feel really like simple, very rarely do people go ahead and do that. And that is such a powerful thing to do. That's one thing. Secondly, whilst you're doing all this great stuff for people, there's probably a scenario where sometimes you feel a bit like you're getting nothing very much back for it. You know, you do all these nice things and people don't necessarily reflect your worth and reflect what you're doing. So sometimes it can be really helpful to go and do something like volunteer. I say that because higher levels of the population who go and volunteer have higher levels of happiness. So you can automatically see what you're doing and see the productiveness of it and have that reinforced. And when we do things that make us feel good, we remind ourselves of how good we are. Also, ask yourself what you're doing with your life. If you love what you're doing, if you love who you're surrounded by, then great. But if you're feeling stagnated, if you're feeling a little bit trapped, if you don't really feel like you're living the best life possible, then doing something completely new, completely outside of your comfort zone, completely wild sometimes, can really help to reinforce your potential. When we don't like ourselves, we start believing that we're limited. When we don't like ourselves, we buy into a narrative that isn't actually our narrative at all. It's just one that we decided on and just followed. You probably have lots of baggage that's being given to you. And one of the things that I used to do with clients, not so much now anymore because I do so many different things, but when I was younger and I work in an integrative framework, I would use things such as getting them to imagine lots of different clothes on them. Some people even dress their clients up so they can do this. And every piece of clothing would represent a message they had been given, maybe from a teacher, you're not clever, maybe from a sports teacher, you don't run fast enough, maybe from a parent, I wish you wouldn't let me down so much. These pieces of language that we're given, these opinions that are not facts, we ingest as facts, and sometimes undressing ourselves in that way is really helpful. So it can also work to sit down and figure out how much of your mental language that's negative has come from you and how much have you been given. Were you bullied, for example? Have you bought into that narrative? undressing and unpinning those feelings that are aroused by people who do that to you, it's a really, really powerful exercise. So try that too. But most of all, know this: you're a really good human, because only fantastic human beings ever question themselves. Only great human beings ever say that they don't like themselves, because they're so introspective and they think they should be more. So know that if there's one thing that you take from me tonight, it's that you're a good human being. And if that's the one thing that you write down at the top of that list, that's the one to start with, okay? I'm a really good human being. And McKenny says so. So it's a fact. Hi, Neil. Just a quick question. My daughter loves mummy dearly, but we find that she sometimes doesn't listen to mum. But when I talk to her, no matter what, she listens. Any ideas? Well done, Neil. No, on a not joking situation. Yeah, I do know. Probably the likelihood is that mum and her spend more time together. I'm just going to make that assumption. What we see with children who get used to their primary caregiver is that there's nothing special about them. You know, they're always there, cooking, cleaning, playing, being around us, connecting with us, taking us to our friends, being our social gurus. So like at the end of the day, they're completely dispensable, because like they're just so there all the time. And then dad comes home or friends come round and it's like, oh my God, this is the most incredible person in the world. This person I only have for a certain amount of time. I'm going to be like on my best behavior entirely. And it makes perfect sense, because when we get less of something, we want more of it. So what I would say first and foremost is reassure your partner that her daughter adores her, feels so loved by her, that it's no biggie behaving for her, because after all, she can always see her and always feels loved by her, and probably doesn't really see that the rules have to be followed, because she just feels so safe. So it's a positive thing in that way. How do you make her listen? Well, two things. If you are having an observable difference in the communication skills that you have, it could be that you communicate differently. It could be, for example, that the way you phrase questions are less demanding, or less, in fact, tactile and kind of kind. It could be that you're a bit more clear. Whatever it is, look at how your language is and help her to frame it in that way, because it might just be that you're doing a really great job of communicating with that child. I'm sure she's doing a fabulous job too. But often, softness, for example, might be taken as an easy way to reject. So if you might do it in a way that's a bit more exciting or a bit more challenging, those kind of things can be helpful. Obviously, you can go for things like behaviour modification. So never ever be negative. Sounds like she doesn't be negative at all, because that's why your daughter's quite happy to ignore her. And it's really important with children to positively reinforce. The brain doesn't decipher positive from negative. So at that age, whatever attention they get's good. But if we focus on the positive attention, it just means the child gets used to wanting to be reinforced for the good stuff. If we ignore the bad attention, they don't get the kind of little prompts that the brain would give them to say, oh, well, let's do that again. So the other side of it is, if you want to work towards issues such as rewards, that can be really helpful. If you want to engage her in a way where mum, if she's ignored, you don't carry on with the conversation until it's actually connected, because ignoring is the most powerful. Children hate it. In fact, on brain scans, guys, one of the things that's really, really powerful is if you look at a child's neglected brain, so a child who's been ignored, they are so devastated. The brain is so devastated. It's shrunken, and it just doesn't look anywhere near as healthy as a brain that's had attention. So attention is like really powerful, and it's the way that a child survives, obviously. But if you hear mum saying, could you do A, B, and C, and she doesn't do it, don't carry on until that is completed. So you start to ignore the behaviour, but until she does what you're telling her, you're not going out, you're not having a treat, you're not doing any of those things. The minute that she comes back, the minute that she responds, then it's lots of praise. That's amazing. Mum is so happy that you've done that, etc., etc. Also, I guess the other side of it is that if you two do things all the time together, it might be nice that mum becomes a bit more exclusive, so that you could maybe go and do things with your daughter independently, and then mum can have a coffee, and then when mum comes back, mum can get some of that kind of cuddly feely attention that kids give. But really, it just comes down to your child feels incredibly safe, incredibly loved, and therefore she really doesn't need to take any notice, because she knows she's always going to be there and she's safe. And that's kind of a really nice thing as well. I always used to say to people, how do your children act elsewhere? I still say this now. So I would have children brought to me and the mother and father would be like, we don't know what to do with this child. This child's doing A, B, and C, and this child's disruptive, and this child's throwing things and getting angry. And I'd be like, how are they at school? And they'd be like, they're amazing at school. They're getting all the top grades. And I'd be like, how are they at your friends? They're incredible at my friends. I want to leave them at my friends. And it's like, you've got a really good kid. They just know how to break your boundaries and push your boundaries because they feel so loved and safe. And we'd start from that point. So when we take the emphasis off behaviour and instead we place it on how loved you've created this child, suddenly we're all on the same page and nobody's afraid of the behaviour anymore. It's just modifying it, if that makes sense. I hope that's helpful for any mums and dads out there, or carers, and people who are looking after kids for other people, because it's really important to kind of see things that way. Hi Emma, I'm the mum of an adult. Oh, toxic relationship as well. I will come back to that. Toxic relationship in a minute because a lot of people have asked about that. Hi Emma, thanks for the invite to message you. I'm a mum of an adult son. He's my only son. He's named after his father's brother who committed suicide in 91. My son and his father have a strange relationship. We separated when my son was 2, although they've had contact throughout my son growing up. Last week, my son received a call from his father whilst he was working in London. First call between them for 18 months. On the 20th of September, I received a letter to say my son is in HMP. I am shocked as I thought he was working in Plymouth. The reason behind my son having no contact with his father is that my son feels his father has no commitment towards their relationship. My son seems to self-sabotage when he feels rejected. After the last time they spoke, 2018, my son smashed the inside of my home to bits. I'm at the end of believing in hope. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being you in return. Okay, there's different issues there. 1, abandonment issues. Abandonment issues, particularly in young men, cause absolute rage sometimes. It's not across the board. Some young people become introspective. Some young people struggle to formulate relationships because of it. But for a subsection of young people, they grow up feeling really, really pissed because why have they been abandoned? What was it about them? Why aren't they good enough? You know, and you get the hassle for it because how come you let him go? Or what did you do to create this situation? So even though they're not the correct ideas and thoughts and stories to play out, it's understandable that they're there. It's just one of those situations that we see in common within therapy. So a few issues. Firstly, if he's got abandonment issues, he needs to work through them. It's one of the most powerful experiences to come to terms with the fact that even when we wished it had been different, the person that should have loved us, should have treated us with care, decided that they did not want to be in our lives. That's a really powerful thing to accept. And when you accept it and stop looking to blame the whole world around you because you're going through these challenging experiences, you drop those feelings of internal rage. That's what he's experiencing. He speaks to him, he smashes something up because maybe he felt feelings that he didn't want to feel. I liked him. I want him to like me. I wish he'd been in my life. Oh, it's opened an old wound. All of these kind of questions come around and really affect that situation. But it can't be acceptable for a grown-up to smash his mother's room up. It's not okay. And whilst I'm not a believer in tough love, I'm also not a believer in accepting boundaries that have been breached to a degree where you could be harmed. And in those circumstances, that's a bit like domestic abuse. Secondly, he's lied to you about being in prison. Why has he done that? He doesn't want you to be ashamed. Simple as. So what we also see, he's got abandonment issues and he has fears of abandonment. Can you see how that plays out? He's got abandonment issues with dad, then he has this really, really internal fear of being abandoned. So he doesn't tell you the truth. He doesn't tell you he's struggling. He doesn't tell you he's in pain. Not because you won't be able to be there for him, but he just doesn't know how to confront that. He hasn't articulated it himself. He's probably not emotionally literate enough to do that either because he's so struggling with feeling in pain and wanting to blame other things and other people that he consistently acts out in these rageful circumstances that eventually get him into trouble. So the big thing is, what do you do with him now he's in prison? I guess the most important thing is to offer him consistent love and understanding that you are not going to abandon him, but a recognition that his behaviour is not acceptable. And from there, how can you manifest some kind of support strategies so that he has to learn to firstly be an adult, because it's what adults have to do. You don't want him to replicate this kind of behaviour elsewhere. Secondly, to realise he's not like his dad, because a big part of this will be that he has a fear that he's a bit like him. And finally, so that he can work through these abandonment issues. And even though I can't give you a solution for that because it involves a third party, what I can say is fundamentally what I am always drawn to in life is the only people who ever really, really, really come through things on the whole, there's always exceptions, but on the whole, are people who have a strong foundation of love. It sounds like what you have is a trust and love of your son in spite of the fact that he's failing in certain areas at the moment. At that age, they act in ways that are destructive, not because they're bad human beings, but because they're in emotional pain and distress. You have to soothe the emotional pain and distress before he can move through it. As far as his relationship with his dad, well, I would have, if I could, and you could do this, I don't know whether it's possible, I would have a conversation with his father, I really would. I would talk to his father about expectations, about boundaries, about impact, because even though you had a relationship a long time ago, you created this child, and this child is in pain, and this child can't be let down anymore, and he either needs to buy into that, or he needs to get away. He either needs to buy into that, or he needs to conclude this journey, because picking in and out is not fair, and it's impacting really negatively on your son. So if you can either get an intermediary, a parent, grandparent, I don't know whether there's people in your life who still has that contact, but if you could mediate, that would be really powerful. Or if you could collaborate, that would be really powerful, because it also shows your son that even though his father is not capacity-wise as capable as you, when the chips are down, you can still act like parents in that way. And that's something that he sadly lacked on his father's part. But also I want to give you clear reassurance that you're being a great parent by being there, by ensuring that he's still loved, and by not judging him too harshly for his actions that are coming from pain. I'm not excusing his behaviour either. You can't be in a situation where you're getting your house smashed up. It's not okay. And he needs to take responsibility for that. And unfortunately, unless he's made to some degree, it means that he can always blame again and always break again. You know, it's one of those scenarios where you kind of need to be reeled in from that. Also, I don't know whether it's possible, but it might be worth speaking to the prison to talk about the fact that you would like him to have some kind of therapy. I know that the system isn't great, but usually young offenders, for example, although I don't know whether it is a young offenders, but if it is a young offenders, they have quite good systems, but it might be worth kind of having a conversation with him about what's available there. I'm not sure how long he's down there for. I was sexually abused by my dad from 12 to 13 until I was almost 19. My boyfriend put a stop to it. That's amazing. Sadly, my boyfriend was an alcoholic and I nursed him whilst we waited for rehab, and he died at 19 in 2005. I'm so sorry about that. I started a relationship again with my dad after my partner's death. We never spoke about the abuse. In 2013, I came off psych meds, and in 2014, told my mum and brother what happened to me. I was drunk. Dad was arrested. I gave a statement. Family believed me, but wouldn't give statements. He mentally abused us all for years. I'm starting EMDR on Friday and want to get my life on track. I know I have to cut my dad out and perhaps others. How will I do it? The idea leaves me distraught. Lots of love. Okay. First of all, you have been through a highly traumatic period of time, both as a child being abused and then in nursing your partner who consequently died. That is a lot of grief. That is a lot of sadness, and I'm glad you're going to therapy. A couple of things. EMDR is obviously going to help you manage the trauma, and hopefully you're going to get a space where you can start to articulate some of these fears, some of these feelings, you know, and some of these issues that you're worried about, such as never seeing your dad again. It's not on me to tell you that you can't have a relationship with your father. I know that sounds horrifying, but it's not my job to go, you can't, because you're an adult and you've got to make your autonomous decisions. What I would say is this: when we have been abused, even by our caregiver, we think that to some degree we are to blame. We shouldn't. It's just one of those things. It's this weird desire to have power over our environment. So we go, well, I must have done something, or if I'd been better, or maybe he just got it wrong because he loved me so much. And we do this kind of stuff to try to rationalise how this utterly reprehensible thing has happened to us. Then they're manipulators, they're predators, they're powerful, they're good at constructing a reality that they want you to believe, and you buy into it. Well, dad isn't really bad all the time. Well, dad loves me sometimes. This kind of narrative is so powerful. And by the end of it, you're like, did the abuse happen? Was it really abuse? Does he really love me? Maybe it's just his way of loving me. But if we lay it down exactly as it is, your father is a paedophile, he's a predatory abuser, he's a dangerous human being, and you deserve better. And even if you don't get justice through the court system, you deserve better. You don't need necessarily to have him carted away and locked up, although I would wish that the case. But what you do need to know is if you accept a relationship with a man who has systematically abused you, harmed you, stolen your childhood, taken from you the very gift that every parent should wish their child to have, then you are saying that you will accept that in every relationship. What we accept from our parents, unless we give consequences to, we accept from everyone. Even with your partner, I'm sure that they were lovely. Please understand when I say this, it will sound judgmental, but I'm trying to do it in a way so you can hear the message within it. So caveat, I am not blaming your partner for his pain. An alcoholic is in emotional distress and is medicating their pain, and I know that and I hear that. But my love, he may have protected you by hearing what you said. He may have understood that you did not deserve that abuse as your partner. But he chose to drink so heavily that he left you. You placed yourself in a relationship with somebody that made you even more vulnerable. And then you went back to your dad. Because if your partner can leave you, if you're not good enough for them to live for you, then maybe you just deserve to go back and be in a really bad, but at least it's a relationship with your father. If you break your relationship off with him, if you give him a boundary and consequence, if you tell yourself a powerful message, I deserve more, I am a victim and I will become a survivor through never having anything to do with that human being in my life, that's when you never find yourself in a position of that vulnerability again. And you start creating markers for expectations. I will only be with a partner who is not a dependent. I will only be with a partner who fully respects me. I will only be with a partner who's willing to protect me, and so on and so forth. You will expect what you wish to give to another human being, which is clearly a great deal. You nursed your partner through alcoholism, and whilst he died, you were there for him. That takes real guts. So if you can start giving yourself that motivation, if you can start easing yourself through therapy into giving him consequences, you are giving yourself the powerful message, and that's what we need to do. So whilst I can't tell you not to, I think you can tell from what I've said that if it was my choice, there would be absolutely no way that you would ever see that reprehensible human being ever again. He may be your father, and that may make you think that what will I have without him? Well, you won't have a predatory, sexual abusing paedophile in your life anymore. Use that language, because all of a sudden, he isn't dad. He's somebody who's super dangerous, okay? I know that was really tough to hear, and I hope it's helped, and please understand it was meant and sent with love, okay? Hi Emma, I have a question, but it might be off topic for you. Can you get addicted to buying luxury clothes? Yes, you can. Simple question. You can get addicted to buying anything. Would you believe that there are people who have very little money who are hoarders who go to charity shops and basically buy everything? That's the way things work. The point is that you get a buzz from what you do. There were two issues there. Firstly, a lot of people go and buy luxury goods because they can afford it. If they can afford it and it's no issue, would that be an issue? Well, yes, because if you surround yourself with materialism, you're not connected, you're not soulful, you're not spiritually connected to anything greater than you, and that usually means that you've got a shallowness to your soul. It means that, I'm talking soul, not in the religious context, soul as in kind of the human soul, the human connection with something greater. I would definitely advise people who have that frivolity to really think independently about what they could do better with their money, because actually it feels really good to do good stuff with cash. Yeah, it's one of the things that me and my husband always talk about. You know, we can have a bigger house or a nicer car, but hey, there are people on the streets, there are things that you can do. There's a way of spending money that can really make a positive difference to this world. Yeah, so my belief is keep your world small create things that have benefit for other people, and that really inspires you. If you have, though, a buzz when you're going out and buying luxury goods and you can't afford it, you're on a negative addictive cycle. Now, what can you do with that? Some people think that CBT is really helpful because it changes behaviours. Some people like to go for more addiction therapy because obviously if you're in that connected cycle, it's good to break it. So more of a rehabilitation approach. And obviously a bit like eating, one of the things that you can't avoid is shopping. So one of the things that you might look at doing is just kind of detoxing. So giving yourself a space of maybe a month where you buy nothing, because it's breaking that compulsion, it's breaking that cycle, and then gradually easing yourself back. And the problem with shopping these days is almost the experience online is so quick that we're not even thinking about it. And for anybody out there who's in debt, you'll know what I mean. It's so easy to kind of make believe that this experience of going on Amazon or anything else, you've just done it in 2 clicks. Everything's made easier. It's like, let's make it so easy. Let's make this user journey so easy for this person to see those boots and then have them bought and then delivered the next day. Oh my God, it's so easy. It must be easy because it must be good, right? That's the mentality of it. That's UX. That's why we do UX with people. It's called user journeys. We like to look at the experience. We make it so simple for you that you just get into debt before you know it. And that's so different to how it used to be. So you have to break that cycle. But therapy is really helpful because the thing is, if you're looking for that buzz, it's because something's missing. There's something missing in your life. You're not connected to something on a visceral level that you need to be connected to. You're not working through whatever challenging feelings that you have. You're avoiding them and distracting yourself. And that's why you're shopping. So that's my answer to that. I've missed one, which was a toxic relationship. Oh, hey Emma, do you have any advice on how to move on after a toxic relationship? Yes, I do. Toxic relationships, we're usually talking about something like codependency or abuse. And what that does is it fractures our self-esteem. It makes us feel like our self-worth has plummeted. And also, I call it the invisibility element. You don't realize you're disappearing in these toxic relationships. Like it's like somebody's like just chipping away at you, just bit by bit, yeah? And then when you're out of it, you're like, who am I? What do I even like anymore? What do I want to do with the rest of my life? Maybe I was a terrible human being and that's why it's ended. Maybe they were right about all the horrible things that they said to me and so on and so forth. Now, what is really powerful when you move forward is firstly to do a relationship audit. And I mean it. It's as simple as that. I want you to sit down. I want you to think about the behaviours that really affected you, that they created. And I want you to figure out the responsibility and accountability you have for remaining in them and accepting it. Again, it's not a blame issue. I want you to sit down and really figure out what on earth made me stay in that situation. What was I willing to accept? Because if I don't know what I'm willing to accept, I can go into another relationship and I can replay it. And we can see that in research. In research, there are a few really interesting things that you can look at in relationships. So first of all, you are more likely to instantly connect with somebody who's just like your ex, not because you're attracted to that type of person, but because you had your ex, and that means that you learned how to communicate effectively with them. Therefore, when you meet somebody who reminds you of your ex, you're automatically ahead of the game because you know how to communicate with that kind of person, right? But we think, well, it must be because me and them connect. No, you just got better at that communication. And that's a really important thing to note because that suggests that we shouldn't just automatically be like, hey, this is because I get on with them. We should really think about what is it that reminds me of my ex in this person and how does that play out in the long run. So a relationship audit is really important. Secondly, new challenges breed confidence. Set yourself some goals, big goals, scary goals, goals that remind you of your possibility, potential and confidence because it's gone, it'll have been eradicated. Go for it big time. A small one, a medium one, a massive one. Do things that scare you. 3, surround yourself by fantastic people. People who reinforce you, make you feel good, make you feel loved, remind you of what a fantastic human you are. 4, try something new to learn. It doesn't matter whether it's a course of study, a counselling course, flower arranging. Do something that tells you you've got more skills than you actually think that you need or think that you had. Also, stay out of the dating game for a while. Not because the most amazing person might just not work into your life. They may do, but try to stay out of it. Try to focus on you. Meditation, mindful practice, yoga, any of those things that build into you that sense that you have value. And most of all, the minute that you meet somebody new, go slow. Go slow. One of the things about toxic relationships that's really symbolic is the speed that people engage in them. Anybody can behave for a year, like anybody. The most abusive person can behave for a year. And if you buy in to that first year, then you're buying into a myth. It's only after that time that people start to really show who they are. Take your time. If the person that you meet is your forever, then you have forever. So build it slowly, work through your issues, constructively use conflict instead of aggression and hostility. Don't allow shouting. Make sure that when you're ready and in that state, you're only accepting what you are willing to deserve. And I mean on the spectrum of what is it that I want for my life plan? What are my life values? What do I deserve? Know that. So a relationship audit, we should all do relationship audits. Every single person, particularly when a relationship fails, it's never, ever on one side. It's always two-sided, and it's a powerful thing to ingest what we need to learn, okay? So do that. Okay, Tracy, suffers from depression and anxiety, lots of physical illness, you felt suicidal, you used the shout service, well done. The shout service is a service that when you're in distress, you can get in touch with people to let them know so they can get in touch back with you. You have a son who's 29 with ADHD, lots of different issues, confrontational disorder, defiant argumentative, some traits of Asperger's, but was left undiagnosed by 2 consultants because they couldn't agree. Does happen. He's grown up suffering depression, refuses medication, you're 13 years sober and you have been free of drugs, etc. for 3 years. He's spending all his money on drugs, alcohol before buying food. You're so worried about mixing the two is dangerous. His moods when he comes down are bad. I'm scared for his mental health and he gets down. Right, okay. 1, it's clear if your son is not being treated because whilst he has depression, he's not having medication, he is medicating, right? Somebody needs to sit down with this guy and have a really strong conversation. He's medicating. He's taking drugs and alcohol. That means that he's medicating. He's self-medicating. He's using a depressant and a stimulant. So that's what he's medicating his emotional discourse and behavioural issues with. So he needs to understand that that's what great medication will do, but better and constantly. So he needs to absolutely recognise that when he's buying drugs and alcohol, he's doing it because he can't cope with the internal dialogue that's going on, with the emotional discourse, with the highs and lows, with the deep crashes. This guy needs a psychiatrist. He needs an evaluation. He needs to sit down, be fully assessed, and then from that, he needs to listen really carefully because all of those feelings that he's got, all of the pain, all of the chaos, all of them putting drugs and alcohol before his own needs, it's all down to the fact that his brain is going everywhere. But that can be resolved, and you can't resolve it in any other way than with a psychiatrist and with proper investigation. And he's probably not going to want to hear that, but I would play this bit to him and tell him that he absolutely needs to do this because there's only one way he's going to go. At worst, he's going to end up in serious unhappiness or even worse. At best, he's going to live a life that really isn't that happy. And what he needs is to have all the chaos switched off. The fact he's using coke and the fact he's using alcohol means he's stimulating then depressing, stimulating then depressing. He's trying to balance, but it's screwed the way he's doing it, okay? Sit him down calmly. Ask him whether he can imagine a life without this internal battle, a life where he's not ashamed, a life where he cares for himself, a life with great relationships, a life with hope and possibility, and then show him that it's absolutely possible. Look, you can either wait for the NHS, I don't know what your financial situation is, but you can also pray for a private psychiatrist. There'll be an NHS approved private psychiatrist, but get a full assessment. I know it's an investment, it costs a bit of money, but it can be really worth it. And also because you're taking him out of the NHS quotium, it can often make people feel like, well, okay, because then it's not going to go through my GP, I'm not going to have to tell anybody about it, and it can kind of just open this conversation a little bit more. He can sit down and really articulate how he feels and then get a proper assessment. Because he needs it, okay? He really needs it. I hope that's helped. I really do. Intrusive thoughts, a lot of people have written in regarding this. Okay, so Pete's trying to lump these together a little bit. Okay, intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are part of the OCD spectrum. People often think that OCD is purely to do with things like ritualistic behaviour, cleaning behaviour. That's what you see on TV. But actually, OCD is often characterised by ruminations, intrusive thoughts, just these consistent, nasty ideas that come into your brain. Very often you might think that you want to kill your baby or you want to murder your mum, and you get these really horrible feelings. It's on loop. You want to kill your baby, you want to murder your mum. But actually what we know is that it's a moral conscience thought process that's gone wrong, because you would never murder your mum or hurt your baby. That's why it's intrusive. It goes against everything you think and feel and believe. It's absolutely the opposite. So first of all, don't be afraid of them. The intrusive thoughts are not there to harm you. It's got stuck. There's a pattern of cognition in your brain that's got stuck, and we need to break it. So how do we break it? First of all, absolutely, if you're having intrusive thoughts, go to your GP and have a conversation. There are medications that can lessen them. Okay, they can lessen them. It doesn't always work for everybody, but they can. Secondly, cognitive behavioural therapy has been proved to be relatively effective with OCD. Third, distraction, disputation. So intrusive thoughts, I'm going to murder my mum. Disputation, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You know you love your mum. There's absolutely no way that you would do that. You dispute it and therefore you disrupt it. Distraction. If disputation's too tough at the beginning, you just do something different. Pick up a can of Coke. Imagine how awful it is for you. Probably not the best one to imagine how awful it is for you, to be honest. That might add to them. But, you know, think about what you could do with the aluminium. Think about how the writing's done. Look at the way it is. Imagine whether you could do it. Maybe copy it yourself. That's distracting and breaking cognitions. So it's about you really playing in to breaking and disrupting that mental cognition itself, okay? It's hard at the beginning, but it's worth doing it. Also, freedom tapping, EFT, look it up, loads of videos online, completely free, don't pay for it, just learn it. That can help. Same with mindful practice, just allowing yourself to learn to have the thoughts come in and just drift off so you don't attach any feeling to it. They just hit you, they go, they hit you, they go. But intrusive thoughts are really upsetting, and absolutely get help with it. You don't deserve to deal with it, all right? Somebody's put, all right, I think it's just wondering if you could help me with supporting two of my clients, a mother and daughter who've lost their son brother to suicide by drug overdose. If you could suggest any books or research, that'd be great. I know you're in the depths of grief yourself at the moment, so this isn't much. Please don't worry. I understand you're human first. Thank you very much. I'm okay. With you guys, reaching out, connecting, supporting each other, just reminds me of how amazing it is to be alive. And I am entirely and eternally grateful for life, no matter what. So even though I'm in pain, I'm also incredibly grateful. So I'm going to put a few links on at the end of this. I've not got them now because I didn't see that question until now. I will put on Proof of Heaven by Dr. Eben Alexander. Don't get all freaked out. It's not like some major religious text. As I said, I don't follow any religion, but it's a brilliant book. And if you've lost somebody and you want to kind of think about the bigger picture, Dr. Eben Alexander is really interesting. So he died properly. He got meningitis, E. coli, and something else. It was really bad. It was as bad as it could have got, really. And he died, and his neocortex died. And the neocortex is the one area of your brain that if you die, you're gone. There was no way he was coming back. And it's his story of coming back. It's really interesting. But I'll find some others that are more specific about coping mechanisms to do with suicide. And I suppose the most important thing is, as a practitioner or as a friend, when you're dealing with people who have lost somebody to suicide, one of the things that I'd get across is this. Absolutely talk about it with them as often as they want. Don't worry about putting your foot in it. Don't worry about saying the same things. Try not to say platitudes like, well, you know, they're at peace now. It's not what people want to hear. Don't get me wrong. I completely understand it. When people say that to me, I get it's from a good place. But when people are dealing with those initial feelings, it's like, I don't want them to be at peace now. I want them to be sat in my front room. Or, you know, the other one, which is that they must have planned it. You know, actually, it could be 5 minutes. that they planned it for. It could be 1 minute there was a train there, you know, so just kind of really allow them that space to just be angry and upset and hurt, and remind them that even when these feelings exist, that there's collateral beauty everywhere. I use that word all the time because it's like with my dad now, I think to myself, and for anybody who's grieving, this is for anybody who's grieving. I keep saying grief is not a competition. Yes, I lost my dad through traumatic grief, but the truth is that grief is grief. You're missing the person. You really want the person you love there. And that's whoever you are, wherever you are. But I think one of the most powerful things about grief is it kind of wants you gripped in. It wants to like reel you in and like hold you in there. And if you refuse to do that, and instead you sit and you say, you know what, this love that I have for this person, this love that's so painful at the moment because it's got nowhere to go, I can allow it to consume me. Or I can say, you know what, this person, when they were alive, were a part of my life. I loved them, they were a part of my life. But there are all these different elements to who we are as human beings, and all the rest of those elements remain. Even a mother who's lost a child, which is the most painful thing that she could possibly be going through. To lose a child as she has is just incomprehensible, but she's a mother to a daughter too. So therefore her mothering is still there. She's still required in exactly the same role. And that amount of care and attention, if she funnels it there, it has purpose and power, right? So some of the things that I do, I just go and sit outside. I sit outside because I like being in the fresh air and the birds are still flying. And the butterflies are still passing me, and the bees are still drinking out of the little bee thing that I've got, and my dogs are still running around, and it reminds me and connects me that this is still a place of hope and wonder. So one of the things that I'd also do, and they won't want to hear it, is remind them. And when they say I don't want to hear it, you say, but I love you, or I care for you, or I'm your practitioner, if for example you're a therapist, and I need you to think about the things that have value, because we want to volumize those. You know, we want to volumize those feelings, because suicide is awful. It's just tragic, but it's not the end of your life. It's the end of somebody else's. And you can allow yourself to be consumed, or you can honor that process and say to yourself, I'm going to live with brilliance. My niece, this is a great story actually. I'm going to carry on a little bit longer because there's some people that I know are waiting for me to answer questions, because I've had so many, I've just kind of got lost because I always do this. So if you've asked a question, I'm going to cover it. My niece the other day, we went out for my sister's daughter is getting married. I can't believe she's getting married very young, let me tell you that. And my sister's older than me. Just want to caveat that. But she's getting married. And we went out with this low-key kind of afternoon tea. And one of the things afterwards, we went across the road because they wanted to drink sangria and I was driving, and I sat and watched them drink their sangria, and there was this great singer and he was singing live, and he was a really great singer, and we knew all the songs. It was lovely listening, and he started a conversation with my niece, and my niece was singing along, and he said, you should come up and sing, and she said, well, I will. And we were all like, what? And he was like, no, really? And she went, well, I will do if you're asking me. And my niece, not the one who's getting married, but my sister's very young daughter, who shouldn't have been drinking sangria, but never mind, she got up and she sang Valerie with him. And she has never dared to do anything like that. And when she sat down, I said to her, I am blown away by your bravery and your courage to go and do that. And she said, since Grandad died, I've realised how short life is, and how being afraid when you might not have a tomorrow is just redundant to feel. And that philosophy blew my mind. This 17-year-old girl seeing that she has two options: to live life with blackness and dread, or to think that she can have wonder and hope. And I will never forget watching her sing, because it has a statement of willingness to live. So remind your friend or your client, remind them that all of this volume is just out of sync right now. It's too loud on the negative, it's too loud, understandably, on the grief. But in time, if she follows the wonder, if she concentrates on collateral beauty, she will find her hope, she will find her reason. And tell her to do things like I'm doing. Tell her to reach out, because it helps you, it really helps you. Okay, one on bullying here. Advice on bullying: my son's getting bullied. I wonder if moving school's the answer. Step one, of course that's an answer. It's a brilliant answer in some contexts. If your son really wants to leave and move schools and that will resolve it, do it. I'm going to be really clear. Bullying is horrible, ruins kids' lives. However, have you followed all the steps and stages? I'm not sure how old he is for a start. It sounds like he's at high school, I'm going to say that. So number one, have you spoken to the school? Have you asked them about their anti-bullying policy? Have you asked them for the protocol that they followed to make sure that your son is okay at school? If that hasn't happened, I would absolutely suggest that they do that. I would manage it. I would make sure that you absolutely knew the processes around it, and I would ask for some help with either a counsellor or a peer mentor in school to sit down and work it through with him. If, however, your son does not want that to happen, if he wants to move school, absolutely. My husband would be the first person to say he was bullied relentlessly at school and he begged in the end to leave, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him. He left in year 10, had the best 2 years of his life at his other school, and it really, really sorted his life out, and he became a really happy, healthy human because of it. So I think go for it. If he wants out, get him out. But if he wants to stay but doesn't know how to deal with it, get them to do the anti-bullying policy. Be an arse, be demanding, challenge them, refuse to accept less than perfect in that situation, and force them to act, because that will make a massive difference to him. Hi Emma, how do I get my partner to understand anxiety and depression and the effects of them physically? He's just got to get on with the attitude, and it doesn't work like that, I know. I don't know whether I said this last time, but I think I might have, but I'm going to say it again. My friend Vicky is a comedian, and she opens her show with, "Hi, I'm Vicky, I'm 40, I suffer from anxiety and depression," or as my dad says, "No you don't." That is one of the best openings ever. And for anybody listening, you'll completely get what I mean, because realistically, some people just think anxiety and depression is something that just like everybody has and you just make up. They don't understand that it's a crippling mental health disorder, often that isn't even to do with what they're doing, it's to do with the way that their brain's interacting. It's a chemical experience as well. So first of all, how do you get him to understand? Well, you cannot stay in a relationship where your partner does not emotionally support and empathize with you. It would be bleak, it would be challenging on a day-to-day basis, and in the end, it would make you feel terrible. I would be clear, and I know that seems drastic, but believe me, I'm saving you from 15 years of feeling less than by doing this. So just hear me out. I would sit him down calmly. I would express your love for him. And I would say, in spite of that, I cannot remain in a relationship with somebody who cannot hear my mental distress. Whilst you may be impatient and frustrated with the struggles I have, understand that that impatience and frustration merely exacerbates those feelings. What I require is for you to become on side with me. I don't want you to give in to my anxiety. I don't want you to give in to my depression. I want you to motivate me. I want you to be the person who makes me get out of bed. I want you to be that person who takes me on that walk when I'm saying I can't do it. I want you to be the confidence that I require when I have new tasks to achieve and I'm afraid. I want you on side for all of that, but I cannot have you fighting me. I can't have you telling me that I just need to do A, B, and C, that if I just tried that, I'd be fine. Because unless they can give you that, you're constantly going to feel like you're failing. Nobody is failing with anxiety and depression. It is a serious, debilitating mental health condition, often to do with chemical imbalances, often to do with brain activity, on top of feeling an emotional experience, because the brain can only communicate with you through emotions. So I would also tell him that whilst he sees this as a very emotional context, the brain can only tell you how it's feeling, as in whether something's going wrong, through emotions. It doesn't have the nerve endings to say it's hurting a bit. It tells you emotionally. So get him to understand that, and then get him to do things that help you. So maybe yoga, mindful practice, walking for 20 minutes a day, going and doing something fantastic like a big long ramble at the weekend, exercise, eating a nutritional diet, all these things that says he's on side. But get him to understand that this is a non-negotiable position. You need him to understand that you need him to be on side with this, okay? Okay. I'm not sure where to begin with this. However, here goes. I was just wondering if you were able to offer some advice or guidance. I'm 22 years old and I've been working in France for almost 2 years now, and I will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Most of the time, I have the absolute time of my life. However, recently, I don't know what's happened. Suddenly, I'm starting to feel really overwhelmed and quite sad, and I'm not sure how to get back on track. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Well, there's different ways of approaching this. First of all, you're 22 and you're away from home and you've been working in France, and even though you're having an amazing time, there is a potential that you're starting to have homesickness. You might not have thought about it that way. Homesickness tends to arrive from like feeling of longing or something's missing. And it could be that you've started to realise that there is something that's happening to you over in France that doesn't feel quite as connected as it would if you were at home. So when we feel sad and we're away from home, it exacerbates those feelings, right? So it could be that you are just genuinely needing to weather these feelings and accept that it's okay after 2 years and doing this amazing job somewhere else and knowing that you're going to stay for quite a lot longer, that you're longing something. You're longing that connection. You're longing being with the people that you love and who love you. So part of it will be that. Secondly, on a more transcendental level, sometimes when things feel great and we've been enjoying ourselves and things are okay, and we suddenly start feeling sad, it can be that we think that maybe it's time for a change. And actually we can feel a little bit scared about that, or a little bit sad, because we can feel that something's changing, something's transitioning, and we can look at that negatively, or we can see it as growth and potential and use it in a hopeful way. So listening to those feelings and saying, right, okay, I'm feeling like I'm going to have to let go of something. That can be quite a painful experience. And then the third element to that is when we feel sad out of the blue and actually we can't really understand it, there's a few things that I always suggest. So first of all, I get a blood test. I just get your bloods done. Sometimes low hemoglobin levels or low ferritin levels can lead to either things like anemia, or low ferritin can lead to really high anxiety and really quite depressive thoughts and feelings. So just getting you checked out, because it could be that this is more of a physical issue. And if it's not a physical issue, then you can add things like exercise and nutrition. I'm going to bang on about that forever because we know that it's proven to have an impact. But I'd get yourself medically checked out, and I'd also go and bob into your health practitioner. I know it might not be as easy in France, but I'm sure that you're brilliant at speaking the language. Just have a conversation about those sad feelings, because it can be that our brain just gets out of kilter. It can be that our chemicals need realigning and redefining by some medication. I'm not saying that's the case. You know how I am, guys. Meditate rather than medicate, but nonetheless, sometimes that's important. But most of all, acknowledge those feelings. If we acknowledge them and allow them to come and pass, often they resolve. But I think, like I said, ask yourself those more transcendental questions. Are you ready for a change? Are you missing home? Do you need to reconnect? Are you longing for a loving relationship? Is it time to start dating? Those kind of things are really important, because it could be that loneliness is that you're seeking a connection, that sadness is that you're ready for something new. And I think if you start seeing it like that, it becomes less difficult to deal with, less difficult to contemplate that things are bad, and actually more ready to contemplate that things are actually really hopeful, if that makes sense. There's always a way of reframing everything. So I've seen the mental health nurse practitioner has been diagnosed with EUPD, okay, instead of bipolar disorder. Could you please give me advice on how to manage coming to terms in attendance for therapy referrals? Anorexic Clinic have said I can't do my therapy with them alongside, and I have to choose. Oh God, what is wrong with this world? What is wrong with the mental health system? How are you supposed to know which one's right for you? What is going on? Honestly, I genuinely apologise for the state of the UK's mental health system. And the weird thing is we're lucky because at least we have one. So emotionally unstable personality disorder is what you're talking about, I'm presuming, with EUPD, and you've not got bipolar disorder. I mean, that's a shock, right? Particularly if you've been medicated for bipolar disorder. So just to people out there, emotionally unstable personality disorder is just that. It means that you can have some really chaotic feelings. You can get very, very over emotional. You can become very heavily and very quickly engaged with love, for example, and then feel very, very rejective of it all in the same moment. It's really hard to deal with. But what's really great about any kind of personality disorder is that we can manipulate it and we can make it, a lot better. But it comes down to things like having some kind of therapeutic environment. That's really helpful. Although some people would argue with me and say they've dealt with it themselves. You've got this diagnosis. So this diagnosis is one thing. It doesn't define you. You know, somebody with EUPD might be with another person with EUPD and have completely different symptoms. This is mental health. But what can you do to manage it? Okay, so first of all, what we know is that you need to ensure that you're trying to avoid things like drugs and alcohol. I don't know whether you take any of those. If you can avoid drinking, avoid taking drugs, brilliant. We want balance. We want a lot of balance. Secondly, how do you manage your mental health in general? Are you going to yoga? Are you going to any meditation groups? Are you doing things that help you to keep control? Are you learning breathing? I always go on about this in every session. Diaphragmatic breathing, controlling the breath, doing things that during times of panic and fear, you can really grab a hold of your feelings. Secondly, you've got anorexia. That's a big deal. You've got EUPD and you've got anorexia. Now, anorexia is the thing that we need to deal with more than anything because that can kill you. So I'm not sure about the therapy side of it. I would say you need to absolutely be under the mental health team for your anorexia. What I'd say about anorexia as well that we don't often note is that if you turn all of the behaviours that you have with anorexia into something positive, you are going to get good results. People who are anorexic, they are the most determined people in the world. They are willing to die for their cause. They can turn their hand to commit like you would not believe. They are individuals who are very bright. Those qualities in the corporate world will see you a millionaire. You're just adapting these behaviours in the wrong place. How can you take the behaviours from the eating disorder, all the things that keep you committed to that, and transfer them to health and wellness? How can you do that? Because if you can commit to anorexia, you can commit to emotional health, you can commit to well-being, and you can do it better than me because you're going to be committed because of that behavioural trait within you. So one, we've got to go with the anorexia therapy because that's going to get you well. Then you can do some work around the balance, mindful practice, meditation, yoga, managing wellness in that way. And also, in the end, when you've come through the eating disorder, speak to somebody about a consistent balancing within a therapeutic context with somebody you'll see regularly, maybe initially for a week, but then once a month check in because you need that. Also join some forums because there are forums for people with these kind of issues, and it means that you feel like you're surrounded by love and people who get you, and that's really important. My long-term health issues are making me doubt that I can have a relationship. They're common, but not true. Do you know what? There are loads of people out there with horrible issues, horrible illnesses, horrible disabilities, and you know what? They live their life the best life possible. It's your mindset. No one wants a relationship with somebody who thinks they don't deserve it. No one wants a relationship with somebody who sees themselves as a load of biological issues. You are more than your sickness. You are more than your illness. You will have amazing things about your personality that you've developed because of who you are in that illness. You will be more patient, more understanding. You will manage emotions better because you have to. You will be a whole host of beautiful and brilliant and amazing that you just haven't figured out. You probably need to do what I said to the first person. You need to ask people what they think of you because you're going to hear a whole host of things about what an incredible human you are. If we define ourselves by the things that are wrong with us, we are never going to be surrounded by people who see our light because we're living that limit. Instead, you see yourself as a whole. You see yourself as kind, as intelligent, as creative, as hopeful. Suddenly, like, of course I want to be around you. You sound amazing. That breaking down of those barriers, those crashing out the limiting thoughts, that's what makes a great human being. Anybody listening to this, you need to do that, right? And I mean that. I am the first person who knows my imperfections. I have many imperfections. I'm cool with them. I'm cool with those imperfections because it reminds me to remain humble. But I am so positive about the things that make me me. And I'm not going to sit back and accept anything less than what I think I deserve because I am a good human being. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it. Because if I say it, I liberate you to say it about yourself, and then you liberate the next person. And when you start looking at yourself as a whole with your amazing talents and gifts, of course somebody is out there. And more than that, by not allowing somebody to love you, you are denying your other perfect person to have the relationship they deserve too. You're denying another human being of this amazing person that you are. So it's not just about you, it's about you accepting that you deserve it so that they get to walk into your life and you get to make them happy. You owe it to somebody else, all right? Go and do that now. And if you're struggling with knowing how to do it, there are loads of sites dedicated to people who've got limiting issues around their body, around their mental health, around anything and everything, and you can meet people who totally get it. So remember that, okay? Doing all the advice you mentioned about getting outside, eating healthy, etc. for my anxiety, but I also get physical pain due to it. Any advice or suggestions would be hugely accepted. Yes, I have advice and I have a suggestion. Clinical hypnosis, really effective for helping people to pain manage. So if you can get in touch with a clinical hypnotist, I shouldn't say hypnotist because people just think about the pub, don't they, hypnotist. But a hypnotherapist would be the correct thing, as opposed to dressing you up as a chicken and imagining that you're somebody that you don't know your husband now. But if you actually go to clinical hypnotherapy, it can be really, really helpful and it can help you to manage pain. And the NHS sometimes offers it, so it's definitely worth talking to them about pain management. Also, absolutely amazing that you're going outside, eating healthy, doing all of that stuff. But as I said, taking it more to the mindset would be helpful. Also, speak to your GP because I know that cannabis is being legalised for certain ailments, CBD. So maybe have a conversation with them. A lot of people also swear by CBD that they can buy. I think you need the more powerful, pungent dose of it, but nonetheless, some people are saying that's really, really helpful. Also, speak to your doctor because there are treatments such as pregabalin. Pregabalin is basically a nerve blocker. And if you want to go down more of the medical route, actually what's really interesting, I'm just thinking your anxiety, okay, actually just thinking about this, pregabalin can also be used to reduce anxiety. So it's a bit of an all-rounder. It blocks the nerves in the brain where pain's associated. You have to take it for a while, but in the end, those receptors that would usually give you feedback, they get switched off or switched down. So ask your doctor about pregabalin as well. Like I said, I'm always meditate rather than medicate, but in certain circumstances, particularly with chronic pain, things like this are there, and not everybody knows and not everybody advises you. So pregabalin, that's the one to ask for, okay? Hi, if you get time, I wondered if I could ask you if you have any advice on managing withdrawal symptoms from sertraline. I tapered the sertraline over 2 months ago and stopped taking it 2 days ago, but I feel terrible. I'm getting dizzy and brain zaps and I feel really emotional. I wondered how long this will last. This is so common. It's really common. It's different for different people. The classic example is withdrawal of anything. You're looking at a good week before things start to feel back to normal to some degree. So the withdrawal effects of antidepressants can be pretty upsetting. You're feeling highly emotional. Part of that is because you're also coming off something that's been important to you for a period of time. You probably feel a bit scared because you know you're giving up, and that's a really powerful thing that you're in that situation and you're ready to do it. Please acknowledge that this is amazing that you feel ready, but also acknowledge that, you know what, who wants to let go of their comfort blanket? It's completely natural to feel really emotional. Those brain feelings where you feel like your head's kind of one step away from actually being where it needs to be, that will reduce soon. What can you do? Firstly, if you can get a few days off work, that would be fantastic. Secondly, if you can get somebody to come around and give you a cuddle, make you cups of tea, remind you that it's going to be all right, that would be really good too. Third, make sure you're eating. I know that'll be the last thing you feel like doing. Make sure you're hydrating. We know that water is really powerful in these situations. Try and drink more water than you would normally do. Might seem small, but it really will make a difference. If you go on my YouTube channel, Emma Kenny TV, completely free downloads there for meditation, getting you to sleep, etc. The biggest thing though is it's going to pass, and you have done something pretty amazing. You've decided to manage your life from now on without that medication, and that is powerful. But always have the caveat. Sometimes we find out that that's not what we want, and that's okay, because coming off antidepressants, sometimes we realise that we want it back, and that's perfectly acceptable too. So know that it's okay to ask for help. I'm not sure whether you're having any therapy, but it might be worth asking for some, because this sounds like a really new environment for you and it's a new part of your life, and that's amazing. But as I said, the thing about detox, the thing about cold turkey, even if you've tapered off, it sucks, but it's going to be all right, okay? Right, guys, I'm going to get going because I've gone way over. I hope I've covered most people's, and if I haven't covered yours now, I cannot apologise enough. And please do me a favour, write to me tonight if I haven't, and I'll make sure that they go up first next session, all right? Loads of love. Take care. Thanks for joining me. Have a great week.